2018 midterms. Anna?
Brian from West Palm Beach, thanks so much. Let's talk about more of this now with CNN national security analyst Sean Turner, CNN political commentator and assistant editor at The Washington Post, David Swerdlick, and radio host and former Republican congressman from Illinois, Joe Walsh. David, I'll start with you. You know, this was an impromptu interview. The president said 16 times there was no collusion. He says he's not worried about the Mueller probe. And he did this entire interview without any advisors or aides nearby. In some ways, it's reminiscent of the campaign trail, don't you think?
Yeah, happy holidays, Anna. I think the president wanted to do two things at once, saying no collusion 16 times to make clear that he was still pushing his narrative, that there's nothing to see here, nothing was done wrong, the investigation is about nothing, and at the same time doing an interview at lunch in Florida without aides present and saying that he had confidence that Mueller would be fair as a way of suggesting that he's relaxed, he's calm, there's a storm swirling about him, but that he's not worried about the ultimate outcome.
Joe, surprising to hear the president take that approach, given what we've been hearing from so many in his party. I mean, he says he has faith in Mueller. He's not bothered by the length of this investigation. Are you happy to see the president taking this position now?
Well, I Anna, think so much. Oh. Go ahead.
No,
Sorry,
Joe,
John,
that was to you, Joe.
So much of this, when you really look back on this year, is so self-inflicted. I mean, the president said that this Russian investigation makes the United States look bad. We know that Russia interfered in the election. Finding out what happened and how it happened to make sure it doesn't happen again, I mean, that makes the United States look good. Imagine how different this year would have been if after Trump won, he led the investigation to find out what Russia did in our election. It's been so disappointing, Anna, that he still can't bring himself to acknowledge that.
And yet he is saying at this point in this interview, the Mueller investigation can take as much time as it is. It's not going to bother him. It doesn't matter to him per se, although, as you point out, bigger picture, he was worried about how it makes the country look. But I know you have been really outspoken about your former colleagues in Congress who have been attacking Mueller's credibility and attacking this probe. Should the president tell them to cut it out?
Absolutely, Anna. And what Trump is doing right here is good cop, bad cop. Look, I think it is disgusting and offensive that my former colleagues and Fox News and everybody is maligning Robert Mueller, but they're not doing that, Anna, if the president didn't want them to. And so it's perfectly easy for Trump to come out last night and say, you know what, Mueller will be fair. These Republicans, they have his blessing, Anna, to go after Mueller, and I think that's a horrible thing.
Sean, in this same interview, President Trump says, quote, "I have the absolute right to do what I want with the Justice Department." Now, of course, this was in response to a question about whether the Hillary Clinton email investigation should be reopened. It wasn't directly in response to this Mueller investigation, but the bottom line, does he have the absolute right to do with what he wants with the DOJ?
Well, I think that when it comes to senior officials at the DOJ, certainly the president, as he's demonstrated, has the right to have senior people in positions that he think serve his interests. But the president has to be very careful here. I mean, traditionally, and I think Eric Holder recently said this, and it's absolutely true, there is a wall that is put up between political figures in the administration and the Justice Department. The Justice Department needs to have the ability to operate independently. And if you look at some of the things this president has done with regard to the Justice Department, for example, interviewing potential other candidates for Attorney General, certainly the allegation that he asked Director Comey to in the investigation on Mike Flynn, interfering with regard to Sheriff Joe Arpaio. That certainly creates the impression that the president does believe that he can do anything he wants with the Justice Department. But I think that, you know, when we look at what happens in other countries with regard to their ability to, abide by democratic principles, we look at the ability for justice systems to operate independent of politicians. And so in this country, I think that we need to uphold that principle, and I think the president has struggled to do that a little bit with some of his interference at the Justice Department.
Yeah. One word that has been used a lot is loyalty, and he talked about his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, and loyalty, again saying it's too bad he recused himself from the Russia investigation. And when he was asked whether Trump thought Holder was more loyal to Obama than Sessions had been to him, he said, "I don't want to get into loyalty, but I will say this. Holder protected President Obama, totally protected him." He went on to say, "When you look at the things that they did, and Holder protected the president, and I have great respect for that, I'll be honest." So, David, if you are Jeff Sessions and you read this, what might you be thinking?
I think if you're Attorney General Sessions, you take that as a slight shot across the bow again from the president, who is, as you say, still smarting from the fact that Sessions early on recused himself. But the comparison to Holder is almost funny, right? Holder didn't have incidental meetings with Ambassador Kislyak prior to coming in and then a Russia investigation, right? So Holder was never in this situation. The Obama administration had their share of investigations, Benghazi, Fast and Furious, the IRS investigation, but there was never this issue where the actions of Holder were in direct conflict with what the president's inner circle was being investigated about, as there is with Attorney General Sessions and President Trump in this case. Also, I think President Trump still sort of doesn't grasp or doesn't want to grasp this idea that other political figures, other figures in his cabinet have their own power centers and they have their own responsibilities. The Attorney General is not the president's personal lawyer. He's the Attorney General of the United States.
Sean, is it a fair characterization, though, to say that Holder totally protected Obama because he did bring up the IRS scandal, the Fast and Furious investigation?
Yeah. No, you know, I worked in the White House as part of the administration during this time, and it's not a fair characterization. Look, there's no doubt that there was a relationship between President Obama and Attorney General Eric Holder that preceded his appointment as Attorney General. But one of the things that's certainly different with regard to that relationship and the current relationship is that Eric Holder maintained a very strict wall between the administration and what the work of the Justice Department. There was never a scenario where the President of the United States, the previous President of the United States, asked Attorney General Holder to take any action with regard to a particular investigation, because there was widespread understanding that would have been a completely inappropriate thing to do. So I think that maybe from the outside looking in, people see the closeness of that relationship and they make presumptions. But when it came to the work of running the Justice Department, there was a clear wall that needs to be maintained.
So, Joe, do you have a problem with the president suggesting that the Attorney General should be shielding the president from allegations of wrongdoing by his administration?
Yeah, look, Anna, I have a real problem with Trump going after Sessions. The Attorney General should remain independent, and Trump ought to leave him alone. But look, there are plenty of us who believe Eric Holder was not the paragon of independence. Holder and Obama were best friends. Holder did protect Obama, many of us do believe, on a number of occasions. I don't think there was an independence there. I get why Trump is saying that, but he's got no business demanding that Sessions is loyal to him. Sessions' loyalty is to the Constitution, to the rule of law.
Gentlemen, thank you all for your thoughts, and happy Friday, happy New Year.